Welcome and welcome to the Adab Book Club. Today is going to be a very special reading effectively. We're going to go through a small chapter, a small segment of this wonderful book, Civilization of Faith by Dr. Mustafa As-Sibai. It's in response to the video previously posted on YouTube concerning the ideas of Sati al-Husri and his pan-Arabist, theory effectively of the world. A number of viewers have actually left comments beneath the video, seeking first of all references for the statement whoever speaks Arabic is an Arab. Secondly, clarification concerning what this means. Does it mean that those who are not Arabs effectively lose their native heritage when they become Muslim? Or is it a way of effectively appropriating the culture of Arabs? Okay, so there are various angles from which this question is being raised, and people are actually interested in finding out a bit more. I'm going to begin by doing a quick reading of this wonderful book so that we can get the context in which the statement is made. Following that, we'll have a quick summary of the points by Sati al-Husri, what he really meant, and how that translates into the real world solution that he sought for the Arabs, inshallah. So on page 92 and page 93 of this book, we have an incident in the life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that will give context to this statement. And so we begin with a gathering in which three prominent companions are present. We have Salman al-Farisi, Suhaib al-Rumi, and Bilal al-Habashi radiallahu anhum. So Qais ibn Mutatiya, who was a munafiq, a hypocrite, came to a circle in which Salman al-Farisi, Suhaib al-Rumi, and Bilal al-Habashi were sitting. And he says, so this man walks into a gathering where he finds Muslims of all complexions, of all traditions, of all nature, coming together to learn the religion. And rather than celebrate this diverse and wonderful mix of human beings, he is incensed by this, and he begins to basically evoke tribalist and tribal pride by saying the following. Al-Aws and Al-Khazraj, which are two prominent tribes of Medina, have undertaken to support this man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what are these people doing here? So he says, Al-Aws and Al-Khazraj have undertaken to support this man. So what are these people doing here? So this man, a hypocrite, a munafiq, actually sees the diversity of the Muslims as something to be frowned upon. And so he makes an objection that since Al-Aws and Khazraj, who are two prominent Arab tribes, have already become Muslim and are disciples of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why are they allowing for these non-Arabs to sit amongst them? Okay, so that was his objection. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, who's one of the leading figures in Medina, tribal chieftains, radiallahu anhu, he stands up and he grabs him by the collar. So he's not happy with this statement. He then goes to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he informs him of what just happened. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood up angrily and hurriedly, dragging his lower garment to the masjid. So he stood up sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he heard this, and he was upset and he went to the masjid. Okay, so he's going to make an announcement, a sermon for the community to learn from this incident. So there he gave orders that the call as-salatu jami'ah should be given. This is a statement, it's a call made during Eid. Okay, so rather than the adhan, this is the statement or the call made, as-salatu jami'ah. And it was made in this occasion to basically alert the people of Medina something important is happening in the masjid. Okay, so something important is happening in the masjid so that they should gather and listen to the address. When the people gathered, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, O people, the Lord Allah is one. The Father, Adam, is one, and the religion, al-Islam, is one. Okay, so the unity of not only who we worship and where we come from, but also our religion. So here we have a reference. Okay, so we're going to follow that reference because the statement is incomplete. We want to complete the statements in this narration. So it was narrated by Ibn Asakir in his famous Tarikh Dimashq, which is a book on those who lived, traveled, and died in Damascus. It's a wonderful book. Ibn Asakir took this narration from Az-Zuhri, Shihabuddin al-Zuhri, who was a teacher of Imam Malik in Medina. So the rest of this hadith is a hadith, reads as follow. The Arabness of any one of you does not come from his father or his mother. Rather, it is the language. Whoever speaks Arabic is an Arab. Okay, so that's where my statement in the previous video comes from. Whoever speaks Arabic is an Arab, and this is where Sati al-Husri also derives his definition of an Arab. Whoever speaks Arabic is an Arab. And again, this is a statement taken from Ibn Asakir, who traces it back to Az-Zuhri, who traces it back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Arabness of any one of you does not come from his father or his mother. Rather, it is the language. Whoever speaks Arabic is an Arab. And there are, of course, further, more elaborate asanid and commentary on that statement and hadith in various other books. But just for those who speak English, this is the book wherein you can find that reference. Okay, takes it back to Ibn Asakir. Now, what does this mean? Whoever speaks Arabic is an Arab. Does it mean that those who become Muslim and speak Arabic, or those who speak Arabic, such as Christians who live maybe in Egypt, who speak Arabic, are automatically Arab if they were Copt, for example? Does it mean that the Arabs are effectively losing their tradition and are being culturally appropriated, as one person said in the comments? What does it mean exactly? Well, it can mean many things, but essentially, Sati al-Husri, in his writings, and the reason why he made the definition of an Arab so broad is because he was influenced by thinkers in Germany, German thinkers, but also European thinkers. In the late 18th, 19th century, there were many movements to create nationhood in Europe. And two very primary examples are those nationalists in France, and the nationalists are those who actually experience and also work towards the unification of Germany in the late 19th century. They had two models of defining a nation. The German model was based on shared experiences, shared values, and most importantly, shared language and linguistic traits. That is what makes a nation in very broad, generic terms. That's what makes a nation for the German people. That's what made them a nation. Whereas the French actually went by the legal system. Okay, it's a set of shared laws and a system that basically defines what a nation is. Sati al-Husri was very critical of the French model and was more inclined towards the German model, in that a nation or nationhood is defined by shared values, shared experiences, and a shared language, which is why he conceives of anyone, wherever they are, if they speak Arabic and have values that are common values amongst the Arabs, specifically through Islam, and especially if they live within the Arab world, then they are Arabs. Whether they're Turks or Kurds or Persians or Somali or Sudanese or Amaziran, it doesn't matter, they'll be considered Arabs. Now, the utility in this is only appreciated from a civilizational level. So the individual person thinking of this statement may be confused and may even feel offended that their own personal, let's say, identity is being eroded and corroded, or being exploited, or being, some people, as again have said, appropriated by others. But the intent is not to make of North Africans, East Africans, Central Asians Arabs per se. It is to emphasize that the Arabic language, the Arabic culture, as conveyed through Islam, because we cannot discount the fact that Islam is a religion that's based on Arab language and Arab customs. If we take, for example, the Quran being in Arabic, there is no way to denounce that many of the, all of the holy sites in Islam are in the Arab world, Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem, and other places in Baghdad and Syria and Damascus. And so there is a lot of Arabic culture intertwined and underlining the Islamic experience, and one cannot deny that. So to be a Muslim, by default, would be to be immersed within the Arabic culture, at least to be influenced by Arabic culture. And that is enough for Sati al-Husri to consider you an Arab, for example. Okay, but there's a utility in this, because, as I mentioned in the video, the previous video, when Sati al-Husri writes his books on history, he's able then to claim and categorize people who are not Arabic, native Arab in terms of their lineage, but speak Arabic or lived amongst the Arabs. He's able to categorize them as Arabs and pass them off as Arabs. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi is an Arab according to his definition. Tariq ibn Ziyad is Arab. Al-Khawarizmi is Arab. and many other very famous, very prominent Muslim figures are then converted to Arabs in the books, which then helps to push the idea and the prestige of the Arab experience for those who read, thinking that all these people were great, but they were all Arabs. Okay, so it kind of helps to forge a new identity for the Arabs, something to aspire towards. Okay, so it has a utility, but also looking at historical context. When we look at, for example, great empires such as the Roman Empire, the Roman Empire wasn't great because it had the most population, the most populous country. Rome was a small country, still is a small country, Italy is a small country. What made them a great empire was the influence they had beyond the borders of the immediate country. The fact that you had Roman citizens and therefore Romans in North Africa, in Central Asia, in various parts of the world, made them a powerful nation, a powerful empire. You know, when the Arabs at the time would say the Romans, they could be speaking of a variety of people. They can be talking of the people in North Africa, in Egypt, for example, who were Copts. They can be talking of the Berbers. They can be talking of many people who are not physiologically speaking Europeans or Italians, but because they've adopted the faith of the Romans, they become Christians, for example, or they speak the language of the Roman Empire, and they accept the laws of the Roman people, and they take the customs and traditions of Rome. They are considered Romans by default. You know, there are traditions that tell us of the end of time, but towards the end of time, the Romans will be the majority on earth. The Romans will be the majority on earth. Now, if you look at the census and the population charts in 2024, we know objectively that the Greco-Roman world, the Europeans, are a minority when it comes to global population. Okay, but they're a majority in terms of lifestyle and outlook. So when we look at the number of people who speak English, for example, or French or Portuguese, or those who aspire to live like the English and the French, for example, in their lifestyle, their customs, their education, they are the majority. They have a greater soft influence across the world than the Muslims have, for example. So that's the understanding in which we have to frame the statements. Okay. Likewise, somebody who speaks Arabic and who has values and cultural references, and who especially is a Muslim, is considered an Arab in that sense. Okay, they come under the umbrella of the Arab experience. And Sati al-Husri, when he mentions that, he's talking from that perspective. Okay, when the Prophet ﷺ says that whoever speaks Arabic is an Arab, it is not to erase the Persian heritage of Salman. Neither is it to make Bilal no longer Habashi but Arabi. No, it's actually to recognize that despite being from a different culture, they can also be termed Arabs because they speak the Arabic language. They also have the experience that we have. They are equal to us, in other words. It's an inclusive, endearing term. It's not something to be seen as an insult to somebody's authentic original ethnicity. It is a way to be inclusive of these people who would otherwise be considered outsiders, as we've seen in the story here. They were considered outsiders by the Munafiq who came in and tried to divide the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ and Mu'adh ibn Jabal understood this is divisive. No, they are amongst the Arabs, they are Arabs. Okay, so that's the way in which to interpret this statement. It doesn't mean you become Arab physically, that would be preposterous. Okay, but it also has a very, very powerful and latent potential, because when we look at the world from the lens of, for example, Sati al-Husri, that any land that has shared values, has the language, especially when it's connected to Islam, they can be considered Arabs. It makes the Arab world greater than it would normally have been if we just take the pure Arab nations. Okay, so from a political perspective, it's a very convenient and very important ideology because it makes the Arab nation a greater nation. When we say, for example, that the Arab world has to fix the issue of Palestine, by strict genealogical definition, that should only include a few countries surrounding Palestine. When we take the pan-Arabist perspective, that anybody who speaks Arabic or has an affinity or has a cultural relevance to the Arab experience or is a Muslim is also considered an Arab from the broader perspective, that extends the reach of this to a wider circle of influence. Okay, that would include everybody in North Africa, in East Africa, in Central Asia. And so suddenly we have a greater force at hand, okay, that can be called upon to answer the call of Palestine, for example. Okay, so he was looking at it from a utilitarian perspective rather than a pure racist and racial perspective that some people can read when they see his statements, they think it means they are Arabs physically. It doesn't mean that, okay? The other thing is also by making the broad definition, one that basically encompasses most Muslims in history, he is then able to claim the glory of other people who come from other nations, for example, the Persians. He's able to claim their genius as part of Arab genius because he considers them Arab purely by speaking Arabic, okay? So there is utilitarian value in what he says, and especially in the way he seeks to frame the world, okay, the Arab realm. So we find, for example, also in the Arab League, there are many nations that geographically are not in Arabia, but it is politically convenient, expedient to have them within the Arab League. It strengthens the numbers, but also the presence, okay? So those nations such as Somalia, many North African nations are part of the Arab League, although you could say, well, they're not physically Arab nations. From a political standpoint, it is very, very positive to have them in. It actually helps increase the numbers and the strength of that unity. So that's a bit of a brief overview as to what he means by whoever speaks Arabic is an Arab, and also a reference for those who wanted a reference concerning the statement itself. It is a prophetic statement. Now, there are some people who will have issues with the interpretation, whether it's authentic. That is a discussion to be had with the Muhaddithun. This is a historical analysis, and I gave historical references. For those who want to have a more detailed and refined hadith-based analysis, there are other sources for that. But it is reference, goes back to Al-Zuhri, who makes a statement based on a hadith that goes back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Finally, one more statement concerning Arabness and Arabhood. There has been a great deal of effort made to define what an Arab is. And it is never easy to define an Arab, what an Arab is. Is it an ethnic, a purely ethnic phenomenon, or is it a social-linguistic experience? And depending on who you ask, for example, are Sudanese people Arab? Are Somalis Arab? Are the people in North Africa, the Libyans, Arab? Are the Egyptians Arab? The answer to that question is very convoluted. It depends who you ask. For example, there are many people who consider these regions all Arab regions because they speak Arabic primarily. And there are others who reject it vehemently. And there are others who reject it altogether. Okay, so it's not an answer that can be given quite easily. But again, it depends on what perspective, where you're looking at it from. Are you looking to define Arabness through a political lens, in which case all these regions are Arab regions, or through a cultural lens, or through a religious lens? Okay, it depends on which lens you're seeking to answer the question from. But it's not an easy answer, because the Arabs themselves, even during the time of Sharif Hussein, had a difficult time conceiving of an Arabness beyond their own tribal connections and their own affinity, their family ties. That was more important to them than the idea that there can be an Arabness, a general Arabness. That's a very difficult topic to broach, and one that would perhaps take hours to break down, but it's not as easy as just saying I'm an Arab. Okay, there are many, many ways of looking at it. But again, from the perspective of Sati al-Husri, who's a very interesting ideologue, it had a very, very, very appealing potential for him, somebody who wanted to build a greater Arab world and civilization. Okay, so his statement is of a political nature, and it has a reality that we can only appreciate if we're looking at it from a civilizational lens, not a personal, individual lens. So, somebody who is a Muslim is not an Arab by default. It doesn't make you an Arab, but it makes you somebody who is under the influence of Arab civilization, Arab culture, Arab language. You pray in Arabic. So, you know, that's a huge component of being a Muslim. You have to pray in Arabic, for example. Okay, so there are our calendars in Arabic, the Islamic calendar is in Arabic. Many, many things. We've traveled to the Arab world to make pilgrimage, many things. So there is no escaping that influence. Okay, and to some degree, we could argue that indeed that makes you an Arab from that perspective. In the same way, those who speak English, who live in the English or the Greco-European world today, who aspire to European ideals of beauty, of ethics, of lifestyle, can be considered Europeans by default. Okay, so it's a very interesting discussion to have. Leave your comments below. Let's see what you feel about this discussion. And again, for those interested in further discussion concerning this topic here, we may have a follow-up video to discuss this, but it's an interesting discussion to have. And hopefully you will be a bit more enlightened concerning the previous video made with this follow-up video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.